Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is December 15th. The Mets signed Polanco, the Blue Jays signed Rogers, and much, much more. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today, ladies and gentlemen? We had a busy weekend, and it's exactly what we want from the winter meetings. It snowballs into the rest of the off season. A lot of teams made some moves this weekend, and we're talking about them, so get ready to roll. I'm excited. I know you are too. We're getting closer and closer to spring training, which means we're closer and closer to the World Baseball Classic, which means we're closer and closer to the start of the season. But we are in the off season and we're talking moves, and we're starting with the New York Mets. Now, I had a lot of negative things to say about the Mets in last episode, but we start off with some positive from the Mets as they are signing Jorge Polanco to a 2-year, $40 million deal. Now, Mets fans, this may seem like a slap in the face, and I understand that because they lose out on Alonso. He goes to Baltimore, and essentially they just signed his replacement 2 years, $40 million, Jorge Polanco. Now listen, let's not start by bad-mouthing Polanco. He has been a very solid player and had, a successful 2025, I would say. When you look at his numbers throughout his career, in 12 years, he's got an OPS of 771, a batting average of 263. Those are solid numbers to have in a 12-year career, by the way, including that incredible 2019 that he had, where he finished 13th in MVP voting, as well as an All-Star appearance that year, his one and only All-Star appearance. He kind of goes down as one of those underrated helping players. He doesn't stand out in any way, hasn't won a Silver Slugger, hasn't won a Gold Glove. But can he play good defense? Yeah. Can he hit the ball a little bit? Absolutely. You look at his numbers over the years, a 789 OPS, a 751 OPS, an 826 OPS, a 658 OPS. Of course, he spent 10 long years with the Minnesota Twins, going all the way back to 2014. The last 2 seasons, however, he has been with the Seattle Mariners, and in those 2 years with the Mariners, he's played 256 games with 214 hits, a 4 WAR, as well as bringing the Seattle Mariners to the ALCS for the first time since 2001. He was the walk-off hero in Game 5 against the Tigers in the ALDS. His hit brought Seattle into the ALCS. He is a valuable player to have. And, for the Mets fans, obviously they're still hurting because when you think of the value that Alonso brings to a table versus the value that Polanco brings to the table, it is different, valued players. Polanco isn't going to go out there and hit 40-plus home runs, Alonso can do that, potentially, but I don't see that in Polanco's future. What Polanco will do, though, is he'll get on base. He'll be kind of a guy who can, get a nice hit here and there, take a walk here and there, set up a Soto, a Lindor, whether it's him that will play first base, whether he goes to, DH potentially. It's an interesting choice there if they want Mark Vientos to play first base. Obviously, with the trade for Semien, you have Lindor and Semien up the middle, so you don't really need Polanco to play second base. Obviously, that's the position he's mostly played in his career. He's played one career game at first base. If that's the route that they want to take, you're saving a lot of money deciding to sign a guy who is going to cost you $40 million instead of a guy who's going to cost you, 150 million, whatever the deal was. I honestly forget off the top of my head how much Baltimore they're paying. Was 250, right? Or was it 150? 155 was the deal that they got there for Alonso. I mean, it's a step in the right direction if you're the Mets. It's a name. It's a guy who, is going to be a tough out. You'd like to see more. You kind of need to see more. As I said, I feel like the Nationals, they're slowly going to get back into the fight sooner or later. The Marlins could get into the fight next year. The Braves should bounce back. And then, of course, the Phillies are still going to be good. If the Mets want to get into that, top 3 fight, maybe even top 4, depending on where Miami falls, it's not enough. Replacing Williams with Diaz, replacing Polanco with Alonso, those are downgrades in my mind. Nimmo versus Simeon, there's financials involved in that and certain details and obviously positioning. But for me personally, if I was picking a team, I'd want a team with Nimmo on it rather than a team with Simeon on it. At this stage of their careers, I feel like Nimmo could still have a better year that he's played before. I think Simeon's best years, the years when he was top 3 in MVP voting with the Athletics and his 40-something home run season with the Blue Jays, I feel like those are behind Simeon. Obviously different players and, different skill sets, but at the end of the day, if you're the Mets, this isn't enough, and you got to keep making moves. They're going to keep losing out on players at this rate, but it is something, and I will, pat the Mets on the back for this one because it is what I think is a pretty solid player to bring into your team. So hopefully it works out for them, and hopefully Polanco has some more clutch moments and some continued success going into 2026. Moving on here, we've talked about this team before. We're once again talking about the AL champion Toronto Blue Jays, coming up short by 2 outs in the World Series. Still hurts to say that. They are adding to the bullpen. They got 2 guys added to the team. The first one being Tyler Rogers, who they signed to a 3-year deal worth $37 million. Now, of course, Tyler Rogers has a twin brother. Taylor Rogers, also in the league, has been in the league longer than his brother, but let me tell you, Tyler Rogers has had a lot more success. He's figured it out. His entire career had been spent with the Giants up until last year in 2025. The Giants traded him to the Mets, and one of those additions that the Mets tried to do. So the Mets lose out on another player that they had going into the free agency. He joins the likes of Alonso and Diaz and Helsley and Mullins and etc. Anyways, Tyler Rogers coming over to the Blue Jays. Of course, his arm angle, very funky, kind of throws from the dirt, as submarine pitcher as you can get. However, his numbers say he's incredible, and let me tell you, he is something. In his 7-year career in the big league, he's played in 420 games with 424 innings. He's given up 130 earned runs. That's a 2.76 ERA in a 7-year career for a submarine pitcher, relief pitcher. That's very impressive. I gotta say, I did not realize his numbers were that incredible. His worst year comes in his COVID year, where in 29 games, he pitched to a 4.5 ERA. Otherwise, he had 2 years where he had over 3. Every other year, his ERA 2.82, 1.02, 1.98. That was last year. Between the Giants and the Mets last year at age 34, he played in 81 games, played half of the season, and he had a 1.98 ERA, a sub-2 ERA. Let me tell you what I love most about this deal. You look at a guy like Rogers with an arm slot that comes from the dirt. Imagine Trey Yesavage, a guy with the highest release point in baseball. Imagine you're a team and you're a player and you're seeing this ball come out of the sky for 6-7 innings against Yesavage, and then you finally get to see another guy come into this game, and it's Tyler Rogers, and he's throwing from the dirt nearly 5 feet, 6 feet difference in where the release point is coming out of that hand. That is an elite and deadly combo. I wish all hitters that have to face the Blue Jays and have to face Yesavage and Rogers on the same day all the luck in the world. To me, hitting a baseball, and I think a lot of people will agree, especially if you're listening to this, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. Now imagine trying to hit a baseball where most of the time you're seeing it from the top of the zone, and now you're seeing it from the bottom of the zone less than half an hour, 40 minutes ago. The difference will be insane. And that's not the only guy they bring over, because the Blue Jays also made a trade with the Detroit Tigers, as the Jays are acquiring right-handed pitcher Chase Lee in exchange for a left-handed prospect pitcher Johan Simon. So Johan Simon goes the Tigers' way. That's who they get. The Blue Jays are acquiring Chase Lee, who last year was his first year in the big leagues. He pitched to a 4.10 ERA in 32 games, where he pitched 37 and a third innings, gave up 17 earned runs with 36 strikeouts, so nearly striking out a batter an inning. The 4.10 ERA, that's something you see from a typical relief pitcher. His arm slot is from the side as well, so when you add him to the mix here, you go Yesavage. If you think of a clock, Yesavage throws from about the 1 o'clock slot. Then you have Rogers, who throws the ball from about the 5 o'clock slot. And now you have Chase Lee, who throws the ball from a 3 o'clock slot. So you got all the major points covered by going Yesavage, Lee, and Rogers. And again, that is an elite and deadly combo. On paper, of course, you'll have to see it in the game. Of course, Chase Lee only will be his second year in the big leagues. The 26-year-old, again, made his first career appearance last year with the Tigers and is now a member of the Toronto Blue Jays, joining that bullpen. The Blue Jays seem to be getting better. They keep making moves. They keep making signings. They've been the front runner for a Bo Bichette or Kyle Tucker type player. Whether they land one of those guys, we're still waiting to see when those news hits. Of course, Tucker and Bo Bichette, two of the biggest free agents still on the block, with the likes of Bregman, Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez. Still plenty of guys to go. But the Blue Jays adding to the bullpen, adding two sidearm submarine kind of throwers, and again pairing that with a Trey Yesavage, it definitely has the makings of a deadly combo. So we'll see how that plays out in 2025. But the Blue Jays coming so close to the World Series title, they are making moves to get better and get better quick. Moving on here, let's talk Royals, because they've got a player that they like so much that they're shelling out some big money for, as the Royals are extending Maikel Garcia. It's a 5-year deal with $57.5 million guaranteed, as well as a club option for a 6th year. From what I've seen so far, the contract is back-loaded, so he'll be making 4.26, I believe, this year. And then every year that goes will be added $3 million each year. So 4.26 this year, followed by 7.26 next year, then 10.26, then 13.26, and then in that 5th and final year, instead of a $3 million jump, it's a $6 million jump. So he'll be getting paid $19.26 million in 2030. Then there is a club option for that 6 years, as I mentioned, in 2031. If the Royals take that option, that would be $21 million. Otherwise, I believe it's a $3 or $4 million buyout in the contract, which is where he gets the 57.5 guaranteed million. Of course, if they take the club option, it would be more, because you're adding that $21 million. Regardless, that's the deals of the contract. Now you got to wonder, who is this player? If you do not know him, you do not remember him from this year, because he did have a career year. He has been with the Royals all 4 years of his major league career, where he debuted back in 2022 for a very small sample size, where he played 9 games, had 7 hits and 22 at-bats, but his first full official season was in 2023. And last year was easily the best year of his career. He's only gotten better here. But in 2025, he had a 5.8 WAR, playing in 160 games. Only missed 2. Career high in hits, 170. He had a career high in home runs with 16. Career high in RBIs with 74. A career high in batting average with 286. And a career high in OPS 800. All these career highs, it's a career year for him. That's why the Royals shelled out the big bucks. He was an all-star. He won a Gold Glove, and he finished 14th in MVP voting. He's going to man the hot corner. He's the third baseman there going forward. Last year, he did it all, though. He played a lot of third, but played some shortstop, played some second base. He had a couple days where he was in the outfield, even in center and in right. So he is a versatile player. From what they saw last year, they think he's only going to improve. And I think, Miguel Garcia will be a name that we kind of keep hearing about and keep talking about as these years go on. I always get a little hesitant when you get a guy like Garcia who, his other 2 years in 2023 and 2024, they're not, $10 million, $15 million kind of players. His 2024 played in 157 games. He had a 231 batting average, a 614 OPS. That's 1 year removed. That's last year, 614 OPS to an 800 OPS. That if that kind of jump happens again this year, we're talking about a guy who's going to have a 900 OPS. Then you start thinking, okay, yeah, this is a very good deal. This could be something that could backfire on the Royals, but I like the aggressiveness approach that they're taking. Sometimes the Royals, I feel like recently haven't had the best opportunity to sign, free agents who are for the lineup. But they have a lot of young, homegrown players who they've been kind of locking up, and kind of guys that they want to have this kind of core around. Guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino. Now you throw in Miguel Garcia, you kind of start to see like, okay, this is the Royals core. You look at the pitching, you see Cole Reagan's back there. You're like, okay, you see where they're coming from. You think the AL Central isn't great. The White Sox aren't going to be in it. The Twins aren't going to be in it. You're basically having to go against the Tigers and the Guardians. So, you make the right moves, you pull the right buttons. The Royals could be a team that could win the division in 2026. And again, by paying out one of your players, you got to think, okay, that does well for his confidence. He's going to want to prove that he was worth the money. He's going to come out and shell for you guys. And he is only 25 years old. He debuted when he was 22. So he's young. The contract will put him in his 30s. When he's 30, 31 years old is when it would end. I like the move from the Royals. Very good job from Miguel Garcia to have a really strong year to get him this kind of deal and to get him the $57.5 million. Because, again, like I said, it was 2 years before that. Not much, nothing crazy. But, hey, a strong 2025 gets you $60 million almost. So good job, Garcia, and for the Royals, I like the aggressiveness, and hopefully it pays off for you. Simple as that. That's all I got to say about the Garcia news here and what they ended up doing. So, yeah, good, strong stuff here. Moving on, the D-backs. We're talking Arizona. We're talking about the Snakes. And what we've got is Merrill Kelly, who is coming back to Arizona. If you do not know, Merrill Kelly had been with the Diamondbacks for his whole career up until last year, or should I say this year, debuting in 2019 with the Diamondbacks. He spent 6.5 years with the Snakes, but of course entering his contract year, the Diamondbacks, not good at the time of the deadline, shipped him off to Texas, where he finished off 2025 with the Rangers, but is now back with the Diamondbacks. He is signing a 2-year deal worth $40 million. So the exact same deal as Polanco signed. 2 years, $40 million, $20 million each year. Kelly's had some up years. He's had some down years. You got to think to 2023, a really strong year where the Diamondbacks made it to the World Series to lose to the Texas Rangers, who the team he was traded to this year. He had a 3.29 ERA that year with 30 starts. This year was another solid year for him. He had a 3.22 ERA with the Diamondbacks, entering the deadline through 22 starts. When he got shipped over to Texas, though, he lost his way a little bit. His ERA jumped, 3.22 with the Diamondbacks. He had a 4.23 with the Rangers, and then ending up finishing with a 3.52 ERA. Made all starts. He was healthy, played 32 games, made 32 starts, 184 innings with 167 strikeouts. His stuff doesn't blow you away, but he'll pitch to contact. He does tend to limit the home run ball. Definitely coughed it up a little bit more so last year. 23 home runs given up. That's his second most in his career, but we've seen him, 11 home runs, 14 home runs, etc. So definitely a tougher year in terms of the home run ball, but still a very solid option. I say a 7-year career. He debuted when he was 30. He's going to be 37 this year, so he is up there in age. But yeah, you got to wonder what else could this mean going forward for Kelly. Arizona, they're still going to be in the mix of things in the West. I wouldn't say they've got a big chance to win the division with the likes of the Dodgers there, but a wild card is definitely on the table depending on how the rest of this offseason shapes up. There's been a lot of rumors about the potential of a Ketel Marte trade, which if that happens, I don't know exactly how you feel about the Diamondbacks. But again, Zach Gallen's a free agent. He's, right now currently unsigned, but if he gets brought back, you never know. Corbin Burns, of course, will be, won't be healthy at the beginning of the season, but when does he come back? How about Corbin Carroll? Can he have a really strong full season? So there are question marks with Diamondbacks, but again, Kelly's been a very solid option for them in years past. He kind of stabilizes the rotation a little bit. Some guys that have that A-plus ability to go out there and give you super strong innings don't have that high consistency level. Kelly, he can go out there sometimes and give you that 7+ innings with, 8+ strikeouts, but you're not going to see him very much go, 3 innings with 8 earned runs. He is very consistent. He'll get you, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, a classic staple for many starters. If I can go 6 innings, 2 earned runs, hopefully my offense can get that third run. Hopefully the bullpen holds it from there. That's what Kelly does. He'll stabilize rotation. He's a very solid pitcher, and for $40 million for 2 years, I think this is a good deal for Arizona. For Kelly, I think, 36 years old, you're getting up there. Get the bag you can and move on. And obviously he loved Arizona enough to the point that he wants to come back and stay with Diamondback. So I think that shows, a level of loyalty, which fans appreciate. I'm sure the fans are very happy to have him back. Probably hurt to see him go, but, when you bring a guy back, it's all water under the bridge. And in 5-10 years, we'll forget about the time that Kelly was even part of the Texas Rangers. So that's what you got to go and tell yourself there. So that is the Merrill Kelly part of this. Now let's move on to Jansen, or should I say the double Jansen, because they were 2 Jansens that signed, one with a first name of Danny and one with a first name of Kenley. We'll start with Danny Jansen, as he is signing with the Texas Rangers for a 2-year deal worth $14.5 million, so essentially $7.25 a year in terms of his AAV. Danny Jansen, of course, once a frontline catcher, very strong offensive numbers, and a decent glove behind the dish as well. More so these days, kind of a backup, and with Texas, with I guess the $5 million for 2 years, you would expect Danny Jansen to play more of a backup role with the Rangers. So far in his 8-year career, Jansen spent it with the Blue Jays, with the Red Sox, with the Rays, and the Brewers. More so with his time in Toronto, where he played with them from 2018 all the way to 2024, where he was traded to Boston that year, and then this year signed with the Rays at the beginning of the season and was traded at the deadline to the Brewers to help them in their postseason push. Ended up, playing 25 games towards the end of the year. Last year, between his time spent with the Rays and the Brewers, got into 98 games, where he had a .215 batting average and a .721 OPS. Jansen has career 88 home runs, so hopefully he can find those other 12 somewhere, get to the 100 level mark, because he is that type of player where he can have those really successful offensive years. His 2022 and 2023 seasons with the Blue Jays, definitely his 2 best years of his career. When you take those 2 seasons combined, he got into 158 games, nearly a full season in those 2 years. He had a 4.5 WAR. He picked up 32 home runs in that time, as well as OPS was .817. He offensively was great. The Blue Jays just had another catcher at the time named Alejandro Kirk, who, they were really split in time with between Jansen and Kirk before trading Jansen, of course, in 2024. So Danny Jansen is now the backup catcher. I would assume that Kyle Higashioka would still take priority. But hey, depending on how he plays, he's only 30 years old. He, I think, still has some in the tank in his defense. Again, very solid. Not, hasn't won a Gold Glove or anything, but he is a very solid ball player. I like Danny Jansen a lot, and hopefully he has a really strong year with the Texas Rangers. But again, he was not the only Jansen to sign, because Kenley Jansen is signing with the Detroit Tigers. Now, I believe this is a 1-year deal with worth $11 million with a club option for 2027. That is what I believe that I saw correctly. Can't quote me on that just yet. But of course, if you don't know Kenley Jansen, but you know baseball, how? Because, of course, Jansen's been around for a long, long time. Of course, drafted as a catcher, ended up changing to pitcher, joined the bullpen, spent 12 years with the Dodgers from 2010 all the way to 2021, where he had 3 years as an All-Star, including a year where he finished 5th in Cy Young and 15th in MVP voting. That, of course, was in 2017, where the Dodgers went to the World Series to lose to the Astros. He is a save merchant. In his 16-year career, he has a 2.57 ERA and 476 saves. So depending on how much the Tigers need him to save games in 2026, we could see Kenley Jansen hit 500 career saves. He is going to go down as one of the top closers ever in baseball. He's up there with the likes of an Eric Gagne and a Trevor Hoffman, among those legends. Speaking of Trevor Hoffman, he's actually won the Trevor Hoffman Reliever of the Year twice in his career. Of course, was with the Dodgers in 2020 when they won the World Series. And if you think those 3 All-Star appearances from 2016 to 2018 was his only All-Star years, you would be mistaken, because after he left LA, he had a year in Atlanta, followed by 2 years in Boston. And that first year in Boston in 2023, he was an All-Star, had a very strong year. And then, of course, last year at the age of 37, he joined the Los Angeles Angels, his 4th team back in LA, just a different type of LA. Last year, he was very good. Got into 62 games, got 29 saves for the Angels. Of course, they're not a good team, so the fact that he still got nearly 30 saves, pretty impressive. His ERA, 2.59. That's the lowest it had been since 2021 with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Since his last year with the Dodgers, this was his best year as an ERA guy. of course, up there with age, he's still getting into 65, 50-ish kind of games. His ERA the last couple of years, it's jumped up a little bit, 3.38, 3.63. Again, those are very solid numbers for a relief pitcher, but again, when you think of his prime years with the Dodgers, we're talking about finishing with a 1.83 ERA, finishing with a 1.32 ERA. That, of course, was his 2017, easily his best year of his career. But again, last year with the Angels was very good. He had a 2.4 WAR, which I believe was his fourth or fifth highest of his career. And again, 16-year career. So still, at the age of 37, he's got a lot in the tank. He is still a top closer in the game. Definitely not the level he once was, but the Tigers got a good one. They definitely got a guy who can stabilize the back end, a guy that AJ Hinch can depend on going into that bullpen to get them those saves that they need. And to just think that they'll be going Tarek Skubal to maybe like a Will Vest to Kenley Jansen on any given day. So that's a pretty cool thing there for the Tigers fans. They should be very happy with the acquisition of Kenley Jansen. So those are the two Jansens that signed. Now we'll talk about three other signings that happened here that are more like chance signings. These are guys who if you know baseball and my level of baseball, I feel like these are all three guys that we're very familiar with. We're going to start with Christopher Morel. He is signing a one-year deal with the Miami Marlins. It's $2 million. Akil Baddoo is signing with the Milwaukee Brewers. It's a one-year deal worth $1.25 million. And then Dustin May is signing a one-year deal with the Cardinals. I don't know the value. That hasn't been shown, and if it has, I haven't found it. But I believe there's a mutual option for 2027 as well. So not sure exactly what May will get paid here. But Christopher Morel, Akil Baddoo, and Dustin May, all players who have had a successful year or two, but have been a few years removed from that kind of success. Going off of Christopher Morel, when he first debuted with the Cubs, we were like, wow, who is this guy who came up and hit 16 home runs? It was very impressive. He had a 741 OPS that year. Then in 2023, he got even better, spent a little bit of time hurt, but, played less games. Had 10 more home runs. He went from 16 home runs to 26. His OPS jumped from 741 to 821. We're thinking, okay, this is a guy for them. Then in 2024, he got kind of off to a coldish start with the Cubs. Ended up with a 675 OPS, but the Cubs felt like they had other needs necessary, so they ended up shipping him over to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Isaac Paredes in that deal there. Finished off the year with the Rays still in that slump. Ended up with a 634 OPS, definitely dropping a lot from the 821 that it once was. And then last year with the Rays, again, struggled down year, 11 home runs, a 219 batting average, a 684 OPS. He's a type of guy who has a lot of power when he is able to hit the ball, has just struggled contact-wise. He isn't able to hit the ball very well. And you feel like, okay, well, then that just means he's a true three-outcome kind of guy, either home run, walk, or strikeout. His walks wasn't that great. He only walked 25 times. He's definitely a guy who, you'd think he'd be like that. But, I mean, again, 11 home runs, 25 walks, 109 strikeouts. You go off his career numbers here, yes, including his good years with the Cubs, 74 home runs to 160 walks to 538 strikeouts. He hasn't found a way to limit the strikeouts. Again, versatile in the fact that he can play outfield, can play infield. He's played in his career, I've seen him play right field, center field, left field, third base, shortstop, second base. He'll play all over, but he needs to figure it out, and the Marlins are going to give him a chance to do so. This 1 year, $2 million deal. If this doesn't work out for Morel, we might not see him entering 2027. The same could be said for Akil Baddoo, who, he was kind of that first guy to come up with the Tigers. You're like, okay, this is the the start of the new wave. They had a couple of draft picks recently. They had picked up Casey Mize. They had picked up a guy like Spencer Torkelson, but Akil Baddoo was a guy who came up and kind of showed up right away. He was a kind of a bright spot for the Tigers in 2021. He had a 2.1 WAR, had 107 hits, a 766 OPS, 259 batting average. All pretty good numbers for a rookie. But that has been the best year of his career. Every year, his numbers have gotten worse and worse. He's played hurt, and when he has been healthy, he hasn't been great. In the years with the Tigers from 2021 to 2025, in his 5-year career, he's played in 347 games, a career batting average of 224, and a career OPS of 674. So those numbers have dropped off hard. He has 28 home runs, a total of 228 big league hits. Last year, had 7 games. He had 2 hits and 17 at-bats. He had a 118 batting average and a 343 OPS. He had a single and a double in 18 plate appearances. He walked once and struck out 5 times. He didn't really get those opportunities. The Brewers, backup outfield, maybe give him a shot here and there, but again, he has struggled with the bat when healthy. So time is running up on a guy like Akil Baddoo. This could be the 6th and final year we see a guy like him in the majors. And that's the difference with Morel and Baddoo here. Dustin May, on the other hand, you can make a bit more of an argument for the type of player he is and where he's gotten, wrong from. He came up with the Dodgers, debuted in 2019, where he made 14 appearances, where he had 4 starts. Showed promise as a rookie, in 2019. 2020 was his official rookie year when he was with COVID. In 12 games, he made 10 starts. He had a 2.57 ERA, finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting. People are like, oh my God, that he's, the Dodgers found another one, because this is when the Dodgers start to got all these, really talented players and really kind of, start building a team here. He was with the Dodgers that year, of course, when they won the World Series, so he is a World Series champion. Since then, though, he has been hurt. And it's been a lot of being hurt. In 2021, he played 5 games. In 2022, he played 6 games. In 2023, he played 9 games. So he was never had a fully healthy season. That 2023, those 9 games, he then went down with Tommy John, did not pitch at all in 2024. This year, started off the year with the Dodgers, but was struggling in a way. In 19 games, he had 18 starts, a 4.85 ERA, a 6-7 record. Just not great. And the Dodgers, of course, with all this pitching in the world, decides to ship him off to Boston at the deadline. In his time with Boston, he made 6 appearances, 5 of which were starts. He had a 5.4 ERA. In 28 innings, he gave up 17 earned runs. He just wasn't good. So when you look at his 6-year career, he is 19-20 record. He has a 3.86 ERA, to be fair, 71 games, 57 starts, 324 innings with 139 earned runs, 297 strikeouts. So entering the 2020s, we saw this guy who, when healthy, was electric. His stuff is really strong. His sinker is elite. The problem was he couldn't stay healthy. Last year, after surviving Tommy John surgery in 2024, last year was his first official healthy year. Still missed a couple starts here and there. Like I said, when you combine his time with the Dodgers and Boston this year, I should say, he played in 25 games, 23 starts, 5 or 10 off the mark there. But, it just wasn't good. He's not the same pitcher that he once was. And, of course, Tommy John can tend to do that to some pitchers. But time is potentially ticking on him as well in his big league career. So for these three guys, Morel, Baду, and May, they got contracts. They got a chance to prove themselves. Now it's a matter about actually, showing up and helping out. Hopefully the Cardinals, Marlins, and Brewers, don't regret the decisions to give these guys a chance. We'll see if any of them get dropped or traded, released, sent down to the minors, etc. But for now, they all have a home, and that's got to be a good feeling for these three players. Moving on, we've got the last bit of news that happened this weekend, and it is another trade. We talked about the Jays and Tigers trade. We have talked about the Royals extending Garcia. We've talked about the Brewers picking up Badu. The Royals and Brewers are the two teams that were part of this trade, and I gotta say, I'm still scratching my head about it. The Brewers acquired left-handed pitcher Angel Zerpa from the Royals in exchange for right-handed pitcher Nick Mears, as well as outfielder Isaac Collins are the two players heading back the Royals' way. All three of these players are major league players, so we'll talk about all of them pretty briefly here. First, we'll focus on Zerpa, the guy that the Brewers got back in this trade here. Angel Zerpa, 5 years in the big leagues, all 5 years with the Royals. He had some strong-ish seasons, I would say. He has some, really good appearances, but then he can also kind of come out and get hit around a bit. Last year with the Royals, he played in 69 games, 64 innings, where he gave up 30 earned runs. That's a 4.18 ERA. Not anything crazy good, but also there's a lot of worse guys you could have in the bullpen. The Royals, in terms of the relief pitcher, got Nick Mears back, who, similar enough to Angel Zerpa, not 5 years in the big leagues, 6 years in the big leagues, so one extra year. He has spent time with the Pirates, the Rockies, and then Milwaukee was a landing spot for him in 2024 when the Colorado Rockies, he ended up with the Brewers that year, and then was with them again in 2025. So in a year and a half with the Brewers, he pitched to a 4.17 ERA in 76 games, 69 innings, 32 earned runs. And again, that's in a year and a half spent with the Brewers. When you look at his entire career, and yes, it's the Pirates and the Rockies, two teams that aren't good, and he would be giving up a lot of runs those years. In his entire career, he's played in 169 games, 164 innings, giving up 84 runs, 174 strikeouts. He has a 4.61 ERA. So on paper, this is almost close to a 1-for-1. I would say Zerpa overall has been better, but I mean, you're going from a career 3.97 ERA to a career 4.61 ERA and a year less. So that's like a 6-point difference, a 0.6 ERA difference there between Zerpa and Nick Mears. What throws me off is that the Royals also acquired Isaac Collins. And if you think that name sounds familiar, it's because we talked about Isaac Collins a lot this year with the Milwaukee Brewers. He did have some games that he played in last year in 2024, but this year in 2025, he played in 130 games where he picked up 98 hits, had 9 home runs, but a 263 batting average, a 779 OPS, he had a 2.1 WAR, and finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting. So the Brewers sent a pitcher who is solid, as well as a guy who finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, for a pitcher that is pretty good, but not great, just somewhat slightly better than the pitcher they sent over. I know the Brewers are similar to the Rays in terms of when they find pitchers, they can tap into some hidden potential that always seems to be there. And I think a guy like Angel Zerpa has a higher ceiling than we've seen so far. His stuff is on paper elite. He just gets unlucky from time to time. But in my mind, I'm thinking Isaac Collins is going to be a good addition to a Royals team. And Nick Mears is still a viable relief option. So in my head, and it's not just me, I'm sure you, if you're listening to this and you know baseball, you're also thinking the same way if you know about this trade. But what I've seen on social media as well is a lot of people saying that the Royals absolutely fleeced the Brewers in this trade. And that's kind of the gut feeling and like that feeling you get, like the pit in your stomach, where it's like, okay, if I'm the Brewers, I got Angel Zerpa, but I gave up Nick Mears, who is similar enough that it could almost have been a 1-for-1, but we're also giving up Isaac Collins, who finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, is dirt cheap, has a lot of years of control left. Like, that's who we gave up. I'm losing my head a little bit on this because, I mean, Isaac Collins was very good. And I know, you can look at the Brewers and be like, well, they do have Yelich. They do have, there's players on the Brewers that we got to know this year. They have a lot of young talent and a lot of guys who, had really strong years. A guy like Joey Ortiz and a guy like Caleb Durbin. When I think of the outfield, you think Jackson Chourio, who, again, is 21 years old, very young. Sal Frelick, who's been around a couple years, but he's only 25. And then Jake Bauers, who, 5 years in the big leagues as well. He's at about 30 years old. Then you have a guy like Garrett Mitchell and Blake Perkins, who are some of those young kids who, dealing with injuries and everything. But there's a lot of outfielders there. I just don't know how you send Isaac Collins. I mean, he was a big part in the Brewers in 2025, and now I think he'll play a pretty big role for the Royals in 2026. I mean, you start to look at the Royals team, and I got to be honest, I'm slowly liking the Royals maybe a little bit more than the Tigers, who, again, that for me is the team to beat. And of course, Tarek Skubal has been mixed up in some trade talk as well. But I mean, you've got Garcia, now you've got Bobby Witt, you got Vinny Pasquantino, you have your leader in Salvador Perez, you have Jonathan India still, you got the young kid in Jack Caglione. Now you bring in a guy like Isaac Collins. You pair that up with a rotation with Reagans and Waka and Bubic and Lugo. You have Lucas Ursay, Carlos Estevez, Nick Mears. So all of a sudden, you kind of like the Royals here as well. So all in all, I think the Royals had a very good trade here and good for them going into this season. And depending on how else they'll handle the offseason, I might pick the Royals to win the division entering 2026. But only time will tell that. For now, we are going to wrap up today's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, the stove is hot. We're heating up now since the winter meetings, which again was only last week. But we've had a lot of big moves, a lot of big signings that have happened, and I think we're only getting started again. There is still a cream of the crop, guys like Tucker and Bo and Suarez. But again, more names are coming off the board. Still lots of trades, lots of rumors. And again, there is still a lot of time. But which team will get those early Christmas gifts coming? Will we see a Tucker signing? Will we see that Bo signing? We're still waiting for those big ones. But moves keep happening. There's still plenty of players, plenty of stuff to go in the offseason. But this is where we end today. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you all. Thank you, everybody, so much. And I will see you next time.